Caste, something South Asians who grew up here in the West have heard or experienced. It's something our parents have brought here with them, and they try explaining it as some hierarchical system where some groups are better than others. And we thought it was just a joke at first, but what if I told you it still exists? Caste discrimination is on the rise, and even worse is starting to be perpetuated by our generation, with cases arising, especially out in California, of caste discrimination.
In this lawsuit that you actually spoke about, the Dalit engineer who brought this complaint of discrimination against his Indian American managers chose to hide his or her identity. I think it's his identity. And you've spoken about how it is important for so many people to actually not come out. And I'm borrowing from the title of your book.
This didn't happen in India or Pakistan. It's happened over here in the West, in America. This type of discrimination that we're seeing is starting to happen here, and it's getting worse and worse. Casteism is a scourge that we've been trying to fight in our own homelands, but now that it's making its way here, we have to really address the issue that many South Asians seem to ignore. It doesn't show up everywhere. Some South Asians don't know anything about caste, but basically it's like this hierarchical system where there's certain sects that are better than or have better opportunities than others, like Brahmins who are at the top and then Dalits who are at the bottom, like we saw in that clip. Or in Pakistan, it's like this Arai or Gujar or Khan or something like that. It shows up in these places where people like to act like that caste they have is their social status, and some are better than others, and they wear it as some kind of badge of honor. In Hinduism and Sikhism, it's more prevalent because it also ties in somewhat to the religion. But here's the key: it's not just social, it's economic. Upper castes have more opportunities and privileges than the lower castes. That's why in the 1960s, when immigration started opening up and you started seeing South Asians coming in, the ones who got in first were upper caste, Brahmins and stuff. They had the privilege and the opportunity to go here and set up their communities and dictate how South Asian policy was.
In 2022, the majority of South Asians or folks of Indian descent that you will meet in the United States, at least especially, are from caste privileged backgrounds, specifically from Brahmin backgrounds.
And that's also when you started seeing guys like Vivek being born in like the 70s, 80s, or Nikki Haley, those types. And I know some will say it's a back home problem, it's not that serious, and that it doesn't affect us like that. It does. This is what's happening now, this Cisco case. It was where the Dalit man joined the Cisco San Jose team, and his entire team was Indian, who were also upper caste. And his managers, who were also upper caste, treated him like crap, basically. Didn't give him the opportunity to go up the ranks, and basically kept him underneath them. And in 2020, the California Civil Rights Department sued, and this became the first caste discrimination lawsuit in U.S. history. And I truly feel for this guy because he traveled thousands of miles away from his homeland where he faced discrimination for being a lower caste, and found that same thing over here in California, being denied promotions, being treated like a servant, all of that, and it's unfair. And frankly, I'm glad California was the first to do something about it. But this was just the first case of it being brought up in court. Imagine all the other cases of lower caste people being treated like crap and having to deal with all of that just because of how they're labeled when they're born. And you're probably thinking, why do some upper caste South Asians do this even though they're over here in another land with different rules and stuff? Well, that's where Hindutva comes in. And this is the craziest part of the story.
Caste discrimination bill has now become law in California. The bill was passed in the Assembly Judicial Committee. The Hindu community has now staged a protest calling it discriminatory and anti-Hindu. So there's a huge row over this anti-caste discrimination law that has been adopted.
Around the time all of this is happening, a group is starting to fight back. That group is the Hindutva group. They didn't want that caste discrimination bill to pass. These groups adhere to Hindutva, which is basically Hindu fundamentalism, which believes in that caste hierarchy and that place of certain castes above others. And it's basically become synonymous with Modi and his policies. He heavily promotes it, and you know your uncles, aunties, some of them over here, they support that type of stuff. But I also want to add, Hindutva isn't Hinduism. It's Hindu fundamentalism, which I said is more extreme and calls for protecting some Hindu identity from invaders and stuff. And we're seeing that being used as some guise to which they can protect that caste hierarchy. And these certain Hindu groups in America, they actively support it. That's why you'll see protests like this. And when Seattle in 2023 became the first state to ban caste discrimination, there's a lot of pushback against it from these type of groups.
The Hindu right has fashioned, I would say, an institutional umbrella in the US diaspora to mobilize a transnational Hindutva movement that has had far-reaching impact since 2002. This bears testimony to the power and resources of long-distance Hindu nationalism, today bolstered by, as well, extremely wealthy companies in Silicon Valley. And together, their organizing capacities in the United States is something that we need to investigate, we need to understand, and we need to understand how to intervene on the impact that they have had to support Hindu nationalism, not only in the United States, but certainly to bolster Hindu nationalism and Hindu nationalist governance in India.
I know, right? It's crazy. The same law that is designed to protect against caste discrimination, which targets the most vulnerable in our community, is being pushed back against by these groups who say it's discriminatory and like anti-religious and stuff like that, even though we know it's not. And somehow it got worse when California tried passing its own law to ban caste discrimination. Those same Hindu nationalist groups lobbied hard against it, and eventually Governor Newsom scrapped the plan to pass the bill. And it's crazy we're even having the debate because caste discrimination was banned in India itself, but it's largely unenforced. And even worse now under Modi and his Hindu nationalist government. I covered in some of my earlier videos about the rise of the South Asian right-wing populists over here in America and the UK, and we're seeing that in full effect. They are inspired by people like Modi, who call Muslims infiltrators and brand Hindus as being under attack by some group. And they bring that over here. And that's why they align so well with Zios or MAGA, because those type of supremacist ideas, it rings with them.
Hindutva is part of the global far right. Okay, Hindu nationalism is a distinctly right-wing ideology, and they have a lot of far-right friends. Now, one easy way to show this with pictures is you know sort of the big guys here, right? So here you have Prime Minister Modi pictured with Trump, Bolsonaro, and Netanyahu.
You'll see plenty of papers like this that show how Hindutva and white supremacists and things like that have a lot in common, even though it's unlikely. And even now in India, most of anti-Muslim Islamophobic hate comes from there online.
So this Hindutva hatred of Muslims, it comes out in all of these specific instances. And when you see them, think of them as kind of bubbles bubbling up, right? And beneath the surface, it's a lava of hatred.
Caste isn't something we just left behind in the homeland. It's actively here and growing. And if you don't fight back against it, we're going to see a lot more cases like the Dalit worker in Cisco. At the end, if you think about it, it was thanks to the civil rights era that we were allowed in. But the first ones who got in were the upper caste ones. But even after that, what we see now is the rise of these brown right-wing populists who parade this idea of the model minority, how they're different from other immigrant groups because they're hardworking and they get it and they don't need welfare and stuff like that. They were only able to get it because they had the opportunities back home, the privileges and the connections to be able to come here and build their businesses and things like that. I wanted to make this video on caste because even in our communities in Pakistan or Bangladesh or Nepal, that stuff still exists. They still talk about it. I remember when I went back recently, they were talking about this caste and they're this caste, and I thought it was really dumb. But some people really take that stuff seriously. I'll leave y'all with this. Our parents came here to seek a better life, different opportunities, and a lot of us were able to make it. We have to be thankful for that. And when we see these type of discrimination cases like what happened with Cisco and what's happening in Seattle, we have to be able to understand why it's happening. A lot of these Hindutva organizations, they'll try to dilute it and say there's discrimination against Hindus or stuff like that when it's not. It's to protect the most vulnerable of our community. Caste discrimination is happening here in the UK, and these Hindutva nationalist organizations, they're spending millions trying to fight for it. Why? Because it would expose that entire argument of the model minority and that they were upper caste and had the connection opportunities to come here and have a more favorable odds. That's why us in the South Asian community need to be more vocal about this type of issues. So I hope you all enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Check out my other videos and peace.